Hello and welcome to part 5 of the Quizness series. So if this is your first time joining me for this series, my name is Anne-Marie Rose, and I am a brand strategist who helps coaches, consultants, and experts just like you to grow your business online in a way that's aligned with the vision you have for your work and your life. Now, this series is all about creating a quiz for your business in the most effective way possible. And like I mentioned, this is step number 5. This is part 5 of this entire series. And what we're diving into today is the 7 essential components of an effective quiz. Now, today we're going to cover a lot of many of these elements that I have seen quiz creators online tend to miss, and it ends up kind of impacting the effectiveness of the entire quiz experience. So I want to set you up for success. You can consider this like a checklist that you can kind of run through and come back to as you are creating your quiz for your business so that you don't miss anything. All right, so like I mentioned, if you're just tuning in for the first time, this is part of the Quizness experience, which is 8 steps to create a compelling quiz for your business. You can go ahead to annemarierose.com/quiz guide, where you can grab a workbook to help you follow along and implement through this entire series. Last week we talked all about strategy. Then in part 4 we sort of shifted into creating the questions. And then today we're talking all about the other components to consider besides just the quiz questions, obviously. So the first element or component that you want to be considering as you are creating your quiz is the start page. So most of you are likely going to be referring people to the quiz, sharing it with people, whether it's via an Instagram post, the link in your bio, or maybe you're going to run Facebook ads. However you are planning to introduce your audience or new people to your quiz, you want to make sure there's kind of like an introduction to it beyond just that initial post sending people there. And the start page should be a place where you're sparking curiosity, getting people really interested in ultimately the result your quiz is going to deliver for them, and then encouraging them to obviously begin the quiz experience. So it's a great time to kind of tease what they'll get out of taking the quiz in the first place. So you can see here I said discover the best way to captivate your ideal audience and grow your brand online. So that's the actual start page for my personal quiz, or my quiz for my business, which is the brand message breakthrough quiz. And that's the start page there. So that's just an example for you to see how I sort of structured that and framed the quiz on that page. Now, the second component or element that you want to consider are the info fields, or better known as just like kind of the opt-in section. So this is like what you'd see on any old landing page if you go to download a free ebook or something, and it pops up and you put your information in to get that free piece of content. Well, it typically is going to function a little bit differently when we're talking about a quiz, because oftentimes there's fields already within the quiz itself. So you can incorporate the opt-in fields right inside of the quiz rather than having a pop-up come up or something like that. Now, there may be an instance when you maybe don't want to give people access to the quiz without first entering their email, and then maybe you would email them a link to the quiz. That may be, there are certain strategies where that may be aligned. If your main goal is to generate email, to build a list of leads, a list of potential clients and customers for your business, that may not be the most effective strategy because it's kind of one more barrier to entry. So I personally have the very first question I ask in my quiz is, what's your first name? And then the very last question I ask right before the people hit submit is, enter your best email address so I can send you the results. Or send you additional information about your results, that kind of thing. So that's how I personally have it structured, but like I said, there's a few things to consider here. The second component that you want to consider incorporating is what I'm just calling question enhancers. These are just some specific elements that are going to help to increase the clarity and engagement with your specific questions that you're asking throughout the quiz. Some examples here of question enhancers are explanations, so to kind of elaborate on what it is you're asking or add clarity to that particular, for your audience members, or visuals, so some imagery that might help. And if you have a very visual brand, what you do is very visual. The kind of questions you're asking are very visual. then maybe your responses are all imagery. Maybe you don't even have a whole lot of text in your responses. So it's kind of just depends on what the content of your quiz is. But just an example for you is one of my questions asks about your brand building strength, what comes most naturally to you. And I have, they're one word responses like curiosity and connection and creativity. And then below that one word that's kind of big and bold, I also kind of expand on what that means, what that would look like if that truly is your brand building strength, so that people can more easily identify with one word over the other. Component number 4. Are we on number 4? Yeah, number 4 is quiz formatting. So what we're talking about here is really kind of the way your quiz looks when someone goes to take it and experiences it. So things like the background and the fonts that you're using. You want to make sure that your quiz is very readable, especially on mobile. That's important. And then that you ideally want it to align with your visual brand identity. So a quick story for you here. My first quiz that I created, I don't know, maybe two and a half years ago, I put this geometric background on it that it was kind of made up of my different brand colors, and I thought it was really cool and it looked really eye-catching. And then I was testing out the quiz and sent it out to some peers and mentors and said, tell me what you think. And they all said, it's really valuable, but it's really hard to read at the same time. So I had this really, what I thought was a super cool and eye-catching background, but it made the quiz really hard to read. So ever since then, I've always put my quizzes and formatted them for my own brand on just a gray background that's still my own brand color gray with purple lettering or purple font, but I skip the geometric backgrounds because they tend to make things a little bit harder to read. So just wanted to share that with you in case you're thinking, oh, I'm going to create this super, I'm going to use something that's super eye-catching and nobody's ever seen before. Sometimes the simpler the better, especially when we're talking about, something that people are going to be seeing on mobile. Now, submission integrations. We're going to get a little techie for a minute, but I promise it's not that complicated. You just want to think about what needs to happen when somebody hits submit on the quiz. What sort of information do you need to go to another place, right? So the most common, it's going to be easiest for me just to tell you, the most common example here is sending that information to an email service provider. So maybe you're using Typeform to host your quiz and you have ConvertKit as your email service provider. You need some of that information to go, their name and email to go from Typeform over to ConvertKit. That would be an example of a submission integration, is setting that up and making sure that happens. I'll take my bracelet off for you. Setting that up to make sure that happens. Now, don't worry if this seems like really complicated for you. I'm going to be sharing a bit more about an intensive workshop that I'm going to be hosting. It's a 2-day workshop where we're going to walk through this step by step and actually do this part together so that it's not overwhelming, it's not complicated. And this is going to be something I'm hosting periodically. So no matter when you're watching this video, there is likely an upcoming intensive workshop. So be sure to check that out. I'll give you more information on that at the end. And then component number 6 is outcome generation. So this is essentially a scoring system that's going to auto-generate the quiz results for you when people submit the quiz, rather than you having to look it over and then manually send them their results. That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, and there are a lot of tools that most of the quiz platforms, all of them, will do that for you. So there's no need to do anything manually. So there are lots of different types of scoring systems, and they're going to depend on the type of quiz that you have. But a really super common and easy to wrap your brain around scoring system is great for a readiness quiz. And if you don't know what a readiness quiz is, be sure to check out the previous parts of this series because I cover that in a previous video. So for a readiness quiz, let's say you know that the person who's least ready is going to score a 0 to a 3. You're going to make every answer, every response that would be most relevant for the person who's least ready is going to be a score of 0. So then when they complete the quiz, if they end up with a score of 0, or maybe it's 0 to 1, maybe it's a range, then you would assign them that whatever result is associated with being least ready. So again, that's another thing that we're going to dive much deeper into and really work through together during that intensive workshop experience, which is an online experience. And, I'll share my screen and make that super simple for you. Then the results page. So this is where the magic happens, really, because this is where you're delivering the real results, the real value for your audience members. So all you need to consider here is, how are you going to display those results for people? Are you going to have a video with a big long landing page? Is it going to be a really quick snippet of text and a PDF download? Are you going to say, check your inbox for your results? There's a lot of different ways that you can deliver this information to people, but you definitely want to consider that ahead of time so that you can plan for it. You can maybe even pick up a quiz platform that easily allows you to set up a really beautiful results page. I personally use a few different tools. So I have a tool that I use to create landing pages, and then I have a tool that I use to set up my entire quiz. So, and then I just integrate them together. So there's a lot of different options here, but you definitely want to consider, what do you want that results page experience to look like, to feel like when somebody hits submit. So there are your 7 essential components to an engaging quiz experience. And your next steps, I would just love to know, like I mentioned, this is part 5. So at this point, if you've kind of caught up on the series, or even if you haven't, I'd love to know what questions you have at this point about creating a quiz for your business. We've got a few more parts in this series, 3 more to be exact. So if I can answer your questions during those videos, or even create a few bonus videos to answer your biggest questions, I'm happy to do that. So be sure to share those questions with me. If that intensive experience, it's going to be a 2-day online workshop, and I'm hosting them periodically, so no matter when you're watching this video, it's highly likely I have one upcoming. If getting that kind of hands-on support, that one-on-one support with a group dynamic, learning and implementing over a 2-day period of time. So really, our goal is to get your quiz totally completed and launched within 48 hours. So if that's something that appeals to you, be sure to head over to annemarierose.com/quizintensive, put your name on the wait list, and I'll email you with more information when the doors open up for you to claim your spot. Now, I would love for you to like this video if it was helpful. Be sure to hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of the videos in this series, and I'll be back here tomorrow with part 6 at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.